you see all of a sudden you get a subscription for this, a subscription for that, and we're trying to shave off, a number of these discretionary expenses, things we just never use anymore. And it could be, a streaming service, for example, and, or, downgrading your cable because I'm looking on my iPad watching YouTube more than I am paying for Spectrum cable, as an example.
What is a good retirement income? It's one of the quintessential questions of planning for retirement and really needs to be addressed from two separate angles. How much is enough or appropriate for you specifically? And then what are the tools that are available to generate that income? With us today, as always, on your game plan for retirement, the head coach. He is Chris McIntire, president and founder of McIntire Retirement Services. That's where you can get your game plan for retirement and answer those questions involved with what is a good retirement income. Chris, I know that this is a question that you spend a lot of time helping clients through, whether it is how are we going to be able to generate it, or I don't necessarily need all of my money to generate this income, but with what I do need, how to do it efficiently and effectively. And you break all of that down from all of those angles.
Yeah, this is going to be a good show as we kind of talk about how we figure this out, and then how do we solve for, the unknown. So you algebra teachers out there be happy that I'm still preaching algebra, that you
Chris,
do need it.
you actually made a comment a while back that algebra is solving for an unknown and calculus is solving for an unknown while things are in motion. And things are certainly in motion in the financial world and in our retirement.
Yeah, they certainly are. And, with today's geopolitical environment, it doesn't look like much of that's going to change. So, volatility is going to be part of this discussion as well. And, as people, work their way into retirement, or who are already in retirement, I mean, they're calculating their monthly expenses. They're looking at what are their monthly income sources, what is the surplus, or most often, what is the shortfall, and how do we make up for that shortfall out of the investments that they have left over and savings. A lot of people, have significant savings that that might be in bank instruments that they don't consider part of their investment portfolio, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, those folks with a surplus, Chris, that what a confident place to be in retirement. Whether you have set that up with your own investments and created kind of your own income portfolio that meets and exceeds all of the expenses, and you actually are continuing to save and invest, or maybe you've been in government or lucky enough to work in a field where you've had a pension or two plus Social Security in a household. Those with surplus income in retirement, probably few and far between, though.
Yeah, for sure. Most people, in today's world are not retiring with their corporate pensions. You mentioned government pensions, teacher pensions and whatnot. But most folks who are in the corporate world, have their 401ks and Social Security benefits. And, if they've got a spouse that has had a good working record as well. So we might have two combined Social Security benefits that maybe that gets them $2,500 a piece or $5,000 a month. That's $60,000 a year. And if they need $90,000 to, live the life they want to live, right, how do we generate that $40,000 gap, take into account taxation, expenses to pay somebody to help you run your portfolio and whatnot, and help with those healthcare costs and all those things that, there are some unknowns, right?
Yeah.
Is
Yep.
somebody going to spend some time in a nursing home, for example, and how, planning for, I guess, the worst case scenario, and then we hope for the best, correct?
Absolutely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to get together your game plan for retirement, a personalized plan, defining goals, working for long-term vision with diversified strategies on how to get there, but mapping out your track into throughout retirement, pick up the phone. That is a courtesy complimentary service there at McIntire Retirement Services. No cost, no obligation to get the plan in your your hands. All you got to do is start that process by calling 419-332-0532, 419-332-0532, 419-332-0532. Chris, backing up for a moment, like McIntire Retirement Services has had a good amount of change in a good way, growth over the past year. Do you want to take just a minute or two and talk about your additional team members and your new office setting? Because all of that's been exciting, and I don't think we've spent much time highlighting that on the program.
No, we haven't. And, most of the times you and I are recording, I'm here in the Port Clinton office, which is, basically our meeting room. We call it a satellite office, if you will. And earlier in 2025, we changed our office, main office, from Perrysburg to downtown Fremont. We had a second story office. We're now in the main floor at downtown Fremont. That's where all the staff goes. And then I still go between here, Port Clinton, Fremont, and Perrysburg. We've added a staff member as well. We got Ross Snyder working for us now, and he just graduated from Bowling Green State University with a degree in finance, and have known his family for a long time. We're really excited to bring Ross in to help with our service modeling and also further his career in the financial services industry. And Michelle, we're getting ready to kick Michelle off here and let her start gathering and building a book of business for herself, through McIntire Retirement Services. So like a sub-advisor, if you will. And they're really helping ease my load. I've been in it for a long time, and we want to make sure that we're living up to our service standards and whatnot for our clients. So it's been a very interesting year. It's been busy. We've been moving and shaking, Peter.
Well, so many conscious, proactive savers and investors have turned to McIntire Retirement Services over the years, decades that you've been doing this, Chris. But it's wonderful that you've helped all those people. So many more need that help and assistance or are looking for some guidance or support. So to be able to continue to provide the wonderful services that you do to so many and to those more that need it, expanding the team, expanding the capacity there, so that you can continue to operate and provide that service and help people answer these important questions about retirement. So, again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, if you have concerns, if you would like to get together your game plan for retirement, McIntire Retirement Services is here to help and assist. And they are looking to do that for as many as are looking for that help or assistance. And you can give them a call, 419-332-0532, 419-332-0532. But Chris, again, congratulations on the growth. It is exciting.
Yes, it certainly is. And, it really helps ease a little bit of the service burden on myself and let me focus on the things that I need to. And we're building out our policies and procedures as businesses grow. And, you always have some growing pains in there. We try not to let anything fall through the cracks, but we're all just, we're human out there as well. So, it's been, I know how to put together any type of office desk material there is. My wife and I have become masters of putting together office furniture for sure.
Consummate shoppers at IKEA. Anything today, it seems, comes from those Amazon packages or requires assembly, and the tool that you get is that little tiny Allen wrench. So
You got it. Yeah, we picked up a lot of extra airline miles in this process too.
Again, today we are talking about what is a good retirement income, looking at it from two angles. How do you define what is appropriate? What is satisfactory to meet your specific needs? What is good for you? And then what are the tools that are out there and available that can generate an income, that income for you into and through retirement? Determining how much you need is a foundational step for lasting financial security and confidence. So on this program, we will talk about that from two sides, which, Chris, really can boil down to that thing that a lot of people have stayed away from and not paid much attention to, the budget. We have to revisit that when we are looking at retirement and define our essentials and estimate our discretionary expenses.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect example is, my wife and I were running through this year because, you see all of a sudden you get a subscription for this, a subscription for that, and we're trying to shave off, a number of these discretionary expenses, things we just never use anymore. And it could be, a streaming service, for example, and, or, downgrading your cable because I'm looking on my iPad watching YouTube more than I am paying for Spectrum cable, as an example, and trying to mitigate or remove some of those discretionary expenses. So for somebody that's going into retirement, I mean, they know what their household expenses are for the most part. Most people have a pretty good ballpark of that. The discretionary items like the vacations, especially if you're just going into retirement, because you might want to spend a month or 2 months down in Florida or Arizona or visiting friends around the country, right? And that's expensive to do. Peter, you and I were just out in California with a meeting with Brookstone, and it's stupid expensive out there. I don't know how people manage it, and
Everything going on out there right now, either it's
yeah.
interesting time for sure. But Chris, yeah, that meeting was very informative in the fact that they were talking about how everybody needs to answer essential questions, even those with the seven-figure net worth, the million, the two, the $5 million 401ks or IRAs, which 20, 25 years ago, that was a rarity. That was a number that seemed almost so big that it would automatically equate to lasting financial confidence. But that even with that number today, people want to answer these questions of how to define those expenses, how to effectively, efficiently leverage the dollars to generate the income that they need. And then, if we answer these questions, how to uh, leave an impactful legacy behind. Because if we can answer these questions of what is the good retirement income, Chris, and then what are the tools that will generate it effectively, then more likely than not, we're leaving that legacy behind, impacting our family and our loved ones.
Yes, yeah, without a doubt. So, we want to look at tax efficiency as well, because when it comes to expenses, taxes are an expense. So, is it something we can help reduce or manage or control, that ancillary expense, just like buying a new car? Many people ask us in retirement, well, do we just stroke a check out of the IRA, or do I take 0 or 2% financing on it? So these are a lot of the variables that we like to help and coach our clients. It's nice when they call us up and they say, hey, we're thinking about buying a second home, or remodeling the house, putting an addition on, and we want your opinions. What's the best way to finance that for us? And those are very rewarding because you're helping somebody, do something they've dreamed about for a very long time. And obviously, the bulk of our business is, we're retiring, we need to structure an income portfolio and whatnot. But boy, it's when you get to help them, achieve some of the goals that they've set out in life. It's very rewarding in our career.
Chris, I mean, when you bring on a client, like at that point in time, you're that go-to call when there is a big financial decision being considered.
Yeah, and it's nice to know that they want your expertise and that, look, we just want to bounce something off of you. Are we thinking about this the right way? And we do a lot of tax planning with our clients, so sometimes we'll just have them reach out to the CPA to say, hey, what's the impact of another $50,000 withdrawal from the IRA account? Are we missing something here with Medicare premium expenses? Are we breaking through some thresholds that may cause some additional taxes? And for a lot of folks, I've got some clients that are going to come in talking about buying a second home, and a part of that equation is going to be, is it better to finance it for a 5-year time frame and pay it off in smaller installments, for example, or do we take a 30-year mortgage and just try to minimize the cash flow needed from our portfolio? So a lot of different variables. There is no just one set standard. Well, you just stroke a check and you want to get out of debt. Dave Ramsey does a lot of great things to get people out of debt. Okay, but what's the most efficient manner to get you out of debt? It's not always a big lump sum withdrawal from your IRA. It might be periodic withdrawals over a 5 year time frame, Peter.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Dave even talks about don't look at the IRA or the 401k as the piggy bank for those large kind of expenses, because of the tax and before 59 and a half, obviously the penalty
Yep.
implications. But there are a lot of folks, Chris, once they get to retirement age, that at least maybe even for part of the year, looking for living arrangements in warmer weather. So I know that you do deal with that question of the vacation homes and the second properties. That's part of like those discretionary expenses, right? So again, so
Yep.
this question of what is a good retirement income, we define our essentials, we estimate our discretionary expenses, those big ticket budget items, we're needing to plan and talk about those, projecting out healthcare expenses. I know a big one as well. Taxes, you mentioned, and healthcare, Chris, big expenses that we need to go ahead and plan for and include from the onset of retirement, or as we're planning for it.
Yeah, we could put in taxes slash inflation because inflation is has about the same impact as increasing taxes as well, right? I think it was Ben Bernanke testified in Congress when he was in the Federal Reserve and said, the threat of inflation is it acts as a stealth tax. You don't necessarily see it day to day until you go to the grocery store and or out to eat or to buy a new car and whatnot. And over the course of time, even a 2% inflation rate is significant over a 20-year retirement. And,
And
so
man,
we
have we
need
seen
to,
a lot of it recently, right, Chris?
yeah, and we certainly have, and to be critical of the Federal Reserve, they said, well, it's just transitory. Okay. Well, all right, here we are in 2025, and is it still transitory? And Peter and I out in California, I think gasoline was $4.60 a gallon, and up the street here now, I think it's 2.85. So we live in a whole different world than they do out west.
Yep.
But Peter, I also wanted to tie this into when we're creating income portfolios and whatnot, I mean, volatility is things that you have to also be prepared for over a long period of time. We obviously had that shock in April of 2025 here this year when, Liberation Day, whatever they're calling it here, and the markets fell, say, 15 to 18% in a very short amount of time, right? Gut reaction is if you just retired, sell everything, go into cash and protect. Okay. All right. Well, then all of a sudden, here we are. The market's actually positive for the year, and it's basically the middle of June right now. So, trying to coach people through that emotion of, look, let's bail out, let's go into cash, we'll figure this out later. It's like that's typically never what you want to do.
Can you avoid some of the fear factor, the gut reaction there, Chris, if you have structured a good income plan? We're talking about that good retirement income, defining, creating guaranteed sources of income, maximizing those. Does that help alleviate that psychological factor involved with the volatility of the market at all?
Yeah, and I'm going to tell a feel good story here. So recently, I had a client come into the office, recently widowed, and so she's fortunate. She'll have a small pension from like the school system, if you will, spouse's Social Security benefit, and then we've added an income annuity to her portfolio as well that we will enact in about a 5 year time frame. And as we walk through that, she's like, I'm going to make more money in retirement than I am working right now. That makes me feel good. And then we realize that, all right, well, out of what we did for you off the side here is several hundred thousands of dollars that you will not need for your income. We're going to satisfy it between the pension, the Social Security, and a high quality income annuity that we have set up for her, and freeing up an entire investment portfolio.
And Chris, then you assess the options for both sides of that, right? What dollars need to create income, what dollars are
Yeah.
available for growth, and stress test and adjust as necessary.
Yes, and take into account inflation as well, and have that income so that it has the potential to increase over her retirement lifetime. And it was a great meeting. You just love it when you see the reaction on people's faces like that. It solidifies why we do what we do.
Certainly, certainly. And again, ladies and gentlemen, if you would like your own game plan for retirement, it is a complimentary courtesy service there at McIntire Retirement Services. They believe strongly that everyone needs a plan, and most people have done well with certain tools, but have not brought those tools together into a true plan for lasting financial confidence. That's what the game plan for retirement is all about. If you would like to get that put together, personalized for you, pick up the phone and give Chris McIntire and McIntire Retirement Services a call, 419 332 0532. 419 332 0532. Chris, the reason why I believe you have a lot of those kind of feel good stories is you look at things a little backwards from, I think, the traditional financial model, which says, oh, you have X number of dollars. Well, everything's going to be great. The market's going to do 8% into the future, and you'll be able to withdraw this, we hope. We base that on kind of past assumptions and projections. You're really doing a more math-based approach, backing up, going from the foundation first and building from there, more than projecting a maybe, hopefully, probably theoretical rate of return.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's nice about being independent, fiduciaries. We probably have access to, a lot of other tools that maybe the corporate portfolio just doesn't incorporate. They just don't take those things into consideration. And, there are competitors out there that we have that say, well, we don't like annuities and neither should you. It's like, well, how many people are paying their Social Security back or their pensions back? I mean, that's a ridiculous statement to make to 300 million people across the United States. People love guaranteed lifetime income. There is only one instrument that does that. And within that instrument, there are good and bad. We're not big variable annuity fans. We like the more safer side, the fixed annuity, the fixed index annuity. And if we need income, we certainly have some. We look through different types of companies that are, their niche might be the income side. Some of them might be more the growth side, and when we're just using it as a safe money strategy. So, I think those are some of the advantages that we bring to the table, the independence, and what is truly in the best interest of the client. And look, sometimes we make a commission, sometimes we charge a management fee. That's how the financial world works. Nobody's we want to be fee conscious, and the cost structure, to make it win-win. It's why we do this.
Well, Chris, I think that's a good segue because we have to first define the math. What is an appropriate income for my financial lifestyle and lasting financial confidence? How much do I need? What is appropriate? And then the other side of that, what are the tools that can then generate that income? And there are a variety of tools out there, and not all tools are good at everything that we will need. But for the purpose of income, there's still a menu of options that we could select and choose from. And those are, again, decisions that you help people weigh the benefits, the disadvantages, the pros and cons of all of those options.
Yes, absolutely. To help people, make clear, concise decisions in respect to all of these issues. Volatility's kind of been what we've been talking with clients about here over the course of the summer, without a doubt, Peter. And, we've had, volatility more in lines with the stock market, if you will, and especially the U.S. stock market. The international side is actually doing better than the U.S. side. That hasn't happened for a long time. The bond market, the government bond market with deficit spending, right? We've had to go with shorter durations. So to remove some of that long duration risk, because, the spending that our deficit spending, I'll say that. So you want to stay away from probably 20 and 30-year U.S. government bonds until, the storm passes, if you will. And we don't know when that's going to be.
Yep.
But then, in 2022, when interest rates went up 11 times, right, the stock market fell 20 to 30%, depending on the index you're using. And then the bond market had one of its worst years in history, because that's what happens when they raise interest rates. The value of the bonds in your portfolio go down. They don't stop paying interest though.
Right.
You
And
know,
that's the income component, right? The
that's
interest from bonds, the yield, the dividends from stocks, the interest from CDs that you could ladder or treasury inflation protected securities. And by the way, not a recommendation in any way for any of these options, just some of the options that are available that are capable of generating income, that are geared and designed to have an income component. And Chris, volatility can affect many of those, as you've noted. And so, for what we have deemed as our essential expenses, that narrows the menu of options because we want to be able to cover those essentials, whether the market is up, down, sideways, it's a sunny or a rainy day.
Yeah, certainly, when you're generating income, you're kind of looking more at the traditional bond markets, the dividend paying stocks that can be boring, the annuity side of things, CDs, for example, like Peter said, the annuity stuff. We're not talking about cryptocurrency, or,
Right.
nothing against crypto. It's not an income generator, and you certainly could be up 60% this year in your crypto strategies. Next year, you could be down 60. That's just incredibly volatile. And I just wanted to bring that up because, we're having more and more clients ask us about cryptocurrencies and whatnot, because obviously the Trump administration is much more friendly to expanding the cryptocurrency marketplace that's out there. And then also artificial intelligence, right? So, what's the play on artificial intelligence? Is it just computer chips from NVIDIA, or is it also utility companies and energy companies that need to develop the energy to drive the AI, like nuclear? The president signed some executive orders, to help expand the nuclear power industry because it's clean. Okay? There's smaller reactors available now. So again, some opportunities, cause and effect. So we need, artificial intelligence is taking off. We need more electricity. So how do we play that? Do we play it just in NVIDIA stock, or do we also include utilities, energy, infrastructure, things like that? A little bit of both,
Well,
right?
ladies and gentlemen, like if you do not want to take on the full load on your shoulders of the responsibility of figuring all of this out on your own, most people don't, I suspect, want to retire and then become around the clock 24-hour financial analyst. That's why you turn to the expertise and the guidance of an experienced, qualified professional. Chris McIntire serves as that resource here. Northwestern Ohio, McIntire Retirement Services is here to help you design, to implement, to monitor, and update your game plan for retirement. So that good retirement income, you have defined the amount, and you continue to assess that as time goes on. We will need more income into the future, and sometimes activity level might lower into the later years of retirement, but inflation kicks in and other expenses can come up. And then what tools are available and appropriate and beneficial in generating that income, weighing the pros and cons of them all. That is with the help and assistance of Chris McIntire and McIntire Retirement Services, all included in your game plan for retirement. If you'd like to get that put together, pick up the phone, give them a call, 419-332-0532, 419-332-0532. And Chris, as a professional and as a resource for your clients, I know you put a great deal of responsibility on your shoulders in walking alongside them in their journey through retirement, and that you genuinely care about their outcome and their results. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, you got it, buddy. And we've invested heavily in our practice to help support those clients, to help people. That's what we do.
Well, it is important to point out that not all financial professionals have the focus on that retirement income time of our lives. And that is in and of itself a differentiating factor with McIntire Retirement Services, is right in the name there. So if you are looking to make that transition or have even already transitioned but want to make sure you're doing all the right things, get a plan in place. Get your game plan for retirement. Give McIntire Retirement Services a call, 419-332-0532, 419-332-0532. You can also visit online, McIntyreRetirementServices.com, McIntyreRetirementServices.com. Chris, always a pleasure. Thank you for being here.
Hey, my pleasure. Have a good weekend, everybody. Thank you for listening, and God bless America.
Tune into Chris McIntire's full radio program and visit McIntireRetirementServices.com for many additional valuable resources, including other great episodes of Game Plan for Retirement with Chris McIntire. Be sure to subscribe.
The content of this radio show is provided for informational purposes only and is not a solicitation or recommendation of any investment strategy. You are encouraged to seek investment, tax, or legal advice from an independent professional advisor. Any investments and/or investment strategies mentioned involve risk, including the possible loss of principal. Advisory services offered through Brookstone Capital Management, a registered investment advisor.
Fiduciary duty extends solely to investment advisory advice and does not extend to other activities such as insurance or broker-dealer services. Advisory clients are charged a quarterly fee for assets under management, while insurance products pay a commission, which may result in a conflict of interest regarding compensation.